Okay, it's 7:01 on October 23rd. We'll begin our meeting with this flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome the guests that are here tonight. Glad to see we have such a good crowd. President Garza was not able to be here this evening, and so he asked me to conduct the meeting as the Vice President. Moving on to A3. Before we do that, the student reps, if you guys want to scoot down, you can. If you want to be close to Stuart, if you want to stay over there, you can do that too, so it's up to you. If item A3, if the board's had a chance to review tonight's agenda, I'll accept a motion to approve.
Before a motion, I have a question. Is the executive session tonight considered a staff evaluation?
I believe that's all we're doing at this point. Some of the other things that were in there were changed, were moved to public discussion. Is that correct, Chris? Yes. Okay.
I move to approve the agenda as written.
We have a motion by Director Simmons to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second by Director Hilmes. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Item B1, public comment. I believe we do have public comment this evening. Maxine Taylor, do you want to come up to the mic if you could? Since we broadcast now, and Chris will help you to get the mic turned on.
I just have a question. I would like to know what the bonded indebtedness level is for the school district.
The max debt capacity is that what you're asking? Ryan?
I call it
Yeah, I know we have that number. If you can get the mic turned on.
Our current debt capacity is currently approximately $42 million. That is our debt capacity.
Is that including the $28 million debt that you already have, one that you already have?
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome.
Thanks, Maxine.
I'm a mechanic. Do I look like I'm on my deathbed?
Not yet. I wave at you once in a while when I drive by your house. Yeah. I'm not very old, though. Both. Moving on to item B2, student rep reports. We'll start with Caden and move this way.
This last week for Othello High School was a pretty big week out of the year, at least in students' eyes. It was homecoming week, and it was really fun this year. We did a lot of kind of like fundraiser type things. So we did the canned food drive during Powder Puff, and I don't know the exact number, but I know we did get a lot of canned food. The penny drive, we raised around $300, $350, around there, that many dollars. It was just really good to see the community all get together and support one another, and especially we had Desert Oasis come for our biggest assembly, and that's Husky Olympics, where everyone gets real competitive. But it was just really fun. It was really neat to see, and I think it was really different this year in that there was a lot of community support. There was a lot of community involvement.
Great. And which class won?
The seniors and the sophomores tied, but the seniors won. That's all that matters.
Okay.
It's good to know.
For us, the juniors, and it was mostly juniors and seniors, for Earth Science, we got to go to the Kittitas Valley and tour around and look at different kinds of rocks and kind of do like a real field study instead of just being in the classroom. So that was really awesome. That's like the really nice thing about having a smaller school is it's a lot easier to do those kind of field trips. So I know a lot of the kids really enjoyed that and learned a lot about our area and how everything was formed. And then, like Caden said, we got to go to the Husky Olympic assembly, and that was really fun. I was a little disappointed more of our students didn't participate, but hopefully next year they will. So.
Okay.
And I know one of the reasons, this is like a total high school thing, one of the reasons that they probably didn't participate was just because we did have sign-up sheets beforehand, so maybe if we did get sign-up sheets to go out to Desert Oasis kids and reach out more to them through our school, I think that would help, and hopefully that's a change that we can make for the future.
Great, great. Yeah, I heard a lot of good things about all of homecoming week. I'm glad it was a good week for all that were involved. And glad we won the game Friday. Things are good. Moving on to B3, board member reports. We'll start with Director Simmons with legislative report.
So I don't really have much to talk about there, but I just was informed, Jen Stevenson was telling me that the potential for a capital budget being passed is looking a little better than it was before. So obviously we'll hope for that, so that as we're going for a bond, that we have some more confident numbers as far as state match goes. I know it's not the major portion of our bond, but it's still a big number that we need to have some confidence when we're asking our community to help out. That's all for me. There's a lot of like interesting things more on a national level that are going on. If you want me to talk about any of that, but probably not. It was really just some Trump stuff. So everyone's good with that.
Okay. Next item shows linkage committee. Maybe that's a discussion on the workshop we had and working towards a direction. I think all three of these items, historical perspective, bond resolution, all of it's just to talk about the workshop we had about the bond, to get the board's direction and the board's thoughts on what we want to have happen.
Well,
the linkage committee itself, I think they're presenting at the next board meeting, right?
is that the plan, Dr. Hurst?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know what we would discuss on linkage committee. Is there?
I don't either.
Okay. Do you know what that was on there for, Dr. Hurst? Or I know you had the meeting with Juan. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Because I'm such a quiet person. How's that? Is that better? Okay. No, no secrets. So the linkage committee, so we'll have them report at the next board meeting. And Jen, I'm sure you guys are ready to present. Do you know what the historical perspective is?
That was just a conversation I had with Director Simmons about just updating our new executive director on just some past items, things to take into consideration, provide a historical perspective.
Yeah, so that was probably talking about the historical perspective on maybe the land lease.
Yes.
As well as the tennis courts, maybe?
Yes,
Is
sir.
that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was brought up. That was something we were going to talk about in the workshop, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm necessarily prepared with that, but I thought it would be good for us, an opportunity for us to share with Brian. I mean, we've had these discussions about the land lease, and maybe there was not a full understanding about the reasons that the board was trying to look for other opportunities. Some of that might have been clarified in the last board meeting. I don't know if you have anything to add to that. We just found out about a district operating policy that might be
I
relevant.
don't, but I probably will when we get to item C4 when
Okay.
when we discuss it. I don't at this point though.
You know, I think this is something that originally I thought a workshop was a little bit better setting for that, Dr. Hurst. So I don't necessarily
sir.
have anything to talk about tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So as far as the interested to hear the board's thoughts as you've had some time to contemplate from our workshop about at the workshop we talked about the sports complex, potential sports complex. We talked about capital levies. We talked about bonds, and we need to ask the district to be prepared to have a bond resolution, I believe, here in the next few board meetings.
Yes, sir.
And plus our the bond committee's been is out trying to get information out about the bond, and so they want clear direction from the board. Unfortunately, not all 5 board members are here tonight, but there's enough to have a quorum, assuming that we all agree on what we want to do. So I guess let's open it up to whoever wants to start as far as your feelings of what kind of a bond we should run in February.
Are you talking about potentially
Whether it
two
should,
different bonds?
whether we want to run 2 different bonds separate.
Or single, or,
Really, I guess first thing is what bond we want to run in February. If we end up running 2, the next one will be after that. So,
correct.
Doesn't
so
necessarily have
really
to
the
be, but
size of the bond, it'd be hard to run 2 concurrently, right?
Well, and then,
I don't know if that would be a good idea or not, but I mean, it doesn't
Right.
have to be.
I don't know if that'd be a good idea, but then also I was a little surprised that there's still a little confusion over the difference between a bond and a levy, and there seemed to be just at that workshop, there's still a couple people were a little confused about the difference between the 2 of them and what we can do, how the money's spent with one and how and comes in, and how it with the bond and how that comes in. So I'm not sure if I don't know if there wasn't 100% across the board agreement one way or another which way we should go, but I think everybody says let's start moving forward. We want to do this. Let's start moving forward. But I don't know if there was consensus to say let's do a bond with a levy, or 2 bonds, or what. I'm not sure if I felt that there was.
Yeah, I'm not sure there ever was community consensus, but I guess from my point of view, I'm not sure that was the intent wholly, was for the board to kind of listen to everybody's thoughts, and then the board is the one that really has
Right.
to decide what we're going to do.
But it would have been nice to get a little
It would have been nice to have clear
little
coming out of that
consensus
meeting,
from
but
the community, because that's who we're representing. So
All right. Did you come away with a recommendation from you, or what you'd like to see happen?
I think we need to do 2 bonds. I think I'm leaning towards a capital levy for the athletic, but it comes back to, and this was a comment made during that workshop actually a couple different times, is we need to make sure that there seems to be some overlap with some of the monies, and we need to make sure we're clear on that, and because potentially the levy could be several $1 million less than what the original 18, the last projection of 18 million, because there seemed to be some overlap in that plus the bond money.
So when you say running 2 bonds, are you saying run a bond for the K-8 need and run a separate bond for the high school need?
Correct.
And then the sports complex could be a capital levy that wouldn't be a bond, but
Correct.
another separate vote. Okay.
So I don't think I had actually considered the 2 bond thing since we did that survey. I felt comfortable with that from that survey that our community had said do them all at once. The one I was struggling with more was do we include an athletic complex? And so when that question came to us, and in the last board meeting, we decided to do the workshop. I really appreciated the people we had there. They were not afraid to give their opinion on it, and my takeaway from that was definitely that, and I think it was probably obvious in my question at the end of the workshop, but I think to leave the sports complex out of the bond would be the best option. And I like the idea of going for a capital levy later. I like the comments that were made about if you're going to build something like that, use cash, don't borrow money over 20 years for something like that. I definitely feel like it would be wise for us as a board and as a district to have some discussions with the city, because in some very preliminary conversations that were had with a couple people from the city, I feel like the city is absolutely interested in combining our efforts and our opportunities that we have as a school district, that they have as a city, to be able to make something for our community on that 80 acres that really is a benefit to our entire community. And my personal feeling is if that means some land has to be gifted to the city so that they can get grants that they're able to get, it doesn't matter to me, because in the end it's all taxpayer money anyways. It doesn't matter if it's the city who maintains it or owns it. And so my feeling is one bond, and I'm basing that off of that survey and the results of that survey. My memory was it was a pretty overwhelmingly supporting one bond rather than two, but to not include a sports complex in that bond though. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, and Mike he's not able to make it to the meeting tonight, but he did call and let me know his perspective on this. His perspective is to go to one bond and to not have the sports complex in there, but he's not here to voice his perspective. I haven't heard from Juan one way or the other, but and that's my perspective as well, is that for sure I think we ought to have the sports complex as a separate issue, and look towards a capital levy for that at some point. And the overarching feeling I got from that meeting was that we need to we have issues with capacity and teaching our kids, and we need to get on getting those fixed. It's kind of I think everybody agrees with that part of it, but with the understanding that even if the single bond passes, that includes the high school remodel and the new school, that the community will understand, hopefully through this bond process, that we're doing one and then the other. So we're really doing them in two phases anyway, even when it passes as one bond. Because of debt capacity, we can't borrow enough money from day one to do the whole project.
So just a clarification, we can run one bond, and as debt capacity becomes available, we'll add, that money will be added basically to that, even though we've passed it and the bond capacity isn't there currently, but in the future it will be, and that's when that money will become available.
So the wording they said was that you pass a bond, but you don't sell the bonds until the debt capacity is available in the community, and it's contingent on that debt capacity. Yeah, that was my understanding.
So for the bond committee, so it sounds like the consensus is that we run one bond without a sports complex.
Well, I don't know if that's.
But Mike's not here.
I don't know if that's what I got from
to give his form. Well, that's not
from
Stuart
though. I mean, Stuart, you were feeling.
Actually, I can be sold either way. I know the survey said one, but in the workshop I was getting a lot of. I thought there was a lot of feedback to say potentially two, but we need to keep moving forward, and I am not against doing one bond, because I don't want this to be delayed because of, do we want to do two bonds or one bond? Either way, we still need to get to the same end point.
Yeah, and like I said in the workshop, I know all the board members agree. We want to do what the community wants, the board, basically all the board is doing is proposing a scenario for the community to approve. The board doesn't approve a bond. We don't approve this. We don't go out and build things without the community's approval. So I think we all want what the community wants, whatever that is. But
Ultimately, they will decide in February.
So we obviously all agree on the sports, the athletic complex as a separate
capital
item. Levy.
Yeah. And so I guess from my view, the next thing that will help the whole community, and Dr. Hurst, maybe they can help us with Architects West, is to get some real solid numbers as to what that bond's going to be exactly, and the total amount we're going to ask for.
We can definitely get that.
So we need that fairly quickly by the next board meeting or so, or the
Well, and I think technically we don't have to pass a resolution, I don't believe, until December, but I wouldn't be opposed to going ahead and passing it at the next board meeting. I don't think there's any harm in passing it early.
I don't imagine Brian would mind if we didn't wait till the last possible board meeting.
Well, and the thing
It's
is,
better for everybody. It's better for the
Yeah.
community to know
well,
here's what it's going to
as soon as you
be.
start getting the information to the community and start the education of what the bond is and what it's all entails, I think is important.
It's going to take, obviously, some research from bond counsel to be
Yes,
able to
sir.
get all those numbers,
Yeah.
get that resolution drafted. But
Yeah.
I don't know if 2 weeks is going to be enough time for them, but
Yeah,
as soon
we'll
as
have-
possible, I guess.
Dr. Bo to touch bases with Jim McNeil, and we can get that to you as soon as possible. We'll get you a timeline also.
Okay. The next item is the NSBA conference. I had sent Juan some information on it, but it didn't make the packet. But the conference is coming up in April, and Stuart won't be on the board then, so it's really just to, but not by April. So if you go to nsba.org, it gives you information about the national conference, and but registration's open, and I don't recall the day that we need to be registered by before the rate changes. But if you would go research it and find out if that's something that you want to go to, and then if you can let President Garza know, and then I'll reach out to Mike as well. And our new board members will have the opportunity to go to that too if they so choose once they're elected.
My memory in the past was January, I think, for the maybe the early bird rates, and which makes sense because I think it's probably common for people to have a November election. It's not certified till later in the year, so it gives people an opportunity, new board members, an opportunity to sign up. But it's April, so I mean it's a long ways off still for me to.
Yeah, I know it's in April and it's in San Antonio,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure the exact dates now. But I wanted to get it on the board's radar.
Thank you.
Is there any other director discussion items that were missed?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so we'll move on to item C1, required approvals. If you've had a chance to look through these, I'll accept a motion to approve.
I have one question. This one's probably for Brian. As I was looking through the joint use of facilities agreement with the city, Brian, and I think maybe it was just that it was removed, but revisions in sections 2, 4.4, 5.2, and 12. There is no 4.4. Is that where the revision was, that something was removed?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. I move to approve general consent.
Okay, motion by Director Simmons to approve general consent listed as required approvals in the agenda.
Second.
Second by Director Hilmes. Any further discussion? On this contract, Chris, with the Adams County Sheriff's Office. Does it show, is there an unlimited number of canine searches that this comes with, or is there a specified number included in this contract?
There is a specified number. It is not unlimited. I will find it because I don't know it offhand.
Okay. I was looking for it, but I couldn't find a number and a charge above that or anything. I just saw the flat rate. It says, well, it says that it's $585 per month for 10 months.
So under A6, it states that the K-9 unit will conduct 9 searches to be collaboratively arranged by the district and the county. So there's 9 total searches that are done per calendar year, or excuse me, per school year, because this does not extend into the summer months. So that's roughly 1 a month.
Just used to have a 10-month contract, but 9 searches.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess that was, my question came in later in that section. It says something about it, that they'll also be available on a short notice situation arrives for an immediate search, and it looks like that's included in the contract, so I was just kind of, that's what I was asking, is if we have 11 searches, are we going to get charged extra, or does that count towards this immediate thing?
I do not believe so. I believe that they have 9 previously scheduled regular searches, and then emergency searches are not at an additional expense.
Okay. Okay. All right. Is any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Item C2, superintendent's comment.
I'd like to say good evening to everyone. We want to just bring your attention to our visit that we have going to Wahidas Elementary School. So we're going to just bring that up for a second for the Board of Directors. We're going to meet in the library at 7:35. It'll be almost a typical agenda that we've seen before. But we'll meet in the library, we'll meet with the staff first, and then we'll have the parents. I will share with you that our team is working. We have a flyer that's going out to all the students that will be taken home to the parents. And we also have a phone dialer message that's going to be going out to all the parents also. So we can get a number of parents out there. Then we'll do student meet and greet in the library. We'll do our classroom visits. Then we'll reconvene in the conference room where we'll look at data. And then we'll have a debrief at 10 in their conference room. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. Any questions?
Great.
Awesome.
No, just remind the community that as with the board we try to always remind, this is a public meeting, and so anybody in the community is invited to come to that meeting. It's at Wahidas on November 7th, and it starts at 7:35. So any community members, as it's a public meeting, are invited and can come if you would like to. Item C3, Dr. Hurst.
Yes, sir. I wanted to just provide some clarity on some previous conversations that we had regarding our contract with our council. So there's 3 documents. I just recently added 1 document, so I just wanted to provide just a summary. When you look at that first document, there was just some questions around a couple of items. One was the retainer fee, but especially around the term, the length of the term, and whether that was reoccurring, and whether we were locked into that piece also. So we did seek out counsel, and if you open up the second document, Talia, this counsel provided a very nice summary, and really on the face it may look like it's reoccurring, but she provided a very nice summary at the end that said it's not the case. There's no exclusivity clause between council and a district, that at any point the district can discharge the services, and even the retainer fee would be given back to us, bound by Washington state law. I also want to call your attention to a third document that I just recently placed in there. And this was a recent conversation that I had with current counsel. So I was really able to clarify everything, and he shared that the information that was entered in there was entered in incorrectly, so I asked him to put that in writing. So he in fact did say also that really the term was a 2-year term under the previous leadership, previous superintendent, and that as long as we informed the council by March 31st, 2018, then we would not be held to that. However, we also engaged in a conversation, and he agreed also that at any point, any district can discharge council services. So there's nothing that's locking us in, even to the March time date. If we as a district decide, even today, that we want to discharge council services, then we can do so, and that the retainer fee would come back to us, basically. So we would have no fees except anything that's current. We would just pay them out and just look for current another service. So I just wanted to provide clarity to the board of directors on that piece, and then also share with the board under board policy, BSR 3, delegation to the superintendent. What I will do is I'll be meeting with my team, and we'll go through a process where we're looking at potentially future council to work with. Either way, we're going to bring all the information back to the board of directors and just share with you along the way what our next steps will be, whether we continue with current council or whether we will be pursuing other council. Just wanted to let you know that we can do that at any point.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Great. Item C4, land lease information.
Dr. Boda?
Alrighty. So as requested, I did look into Dr. Ashton's inquiry regarding,
I'm not a doctor yet.
I'm sorry,
I'm studying.
board member, Director Ashton's inquiry regarding drip irrigation and basically sports turf. The two are not compatible. With drip irrigation, new drip tape is laid every year. That's what they would do if they were to put in onions on that property. I did get some basic ballpark costs to do that. Approximate estimates for drip tape are roughly $200 per acre, and that's an annual cost. Those are one-time use only. It would cost approximately between $25,000 and $45,000 to install a pump station and some underground infrastructure to deliver water from the canal to that drip tape. Total estimates, if we wanted to install a drip irrigation system on that 60 farmable acres, would be approximately $71,000. That is not an annual cost, but there would be approximately $12,000 annual cost to replace that tape. Again, it's one season use only.
Did you find out if that usually is that cost is usually on a normal lease? Is that usually provided as part of the lease agreement with the tenant that's going to provide that, going to plant the onions, or is that something that the ground holder normally pays for in that kind of a lease?
It varies. Typically, the ground holder provides the water and the access to the water, so that underground infrastructure. Generally, the tape, not always, but generally the tape is purchased by the farmer, him or herself.
Okay.
The sports turf irrigation, sprinkler irrigation, for lack of a better term, is a different story. That contains perennial parts. None of that is torn up per year. It includes, you would again have a pump station, and you would have subterranean PVC pipes, which are connected to heads that, when they're turned on, they come up out of the ground, they spray. That is not compatible with row crop production due to getting in there and having to till the earth. You would damage those pipes. It would be compatible with pasture. So if you were raising some kind of pasture grass or hay.
Yeah, I think my question probably was misunderstood, probably an error on my part. I was talking about just the physical pump, not the underground sprinkler system that we'll have to put in for
Well,
the...
I also have an estimate on that. So the physical
Yeah.
pump, what they
Is the
referred
pump itself different than an irrigation than you would use for drip, or is it the
No.
same pump?
it's the same pump.
Okay.
They're adjustable due to pressure. You would use
Yeah.
different pressures for the different two.
Mhm.
But that pump station ranges between $25,000 and $45,000, and that is something that the landowner would install.
Correct. Yeah, but it's something that we're going to have to install at some point.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
I did talk to the FFA coordinators for Othello High School. They're both incredibly interested, very, very interested in the possibility. They have a what's called a CTE Ag Advisory Meeting, which they are bringing this up to. That is also being held tonight. So they can't get back to us with a final answer because they're meeting right now to discuss it. They did state that currently on that property, 60 acres is being farmed, 60 out of the 81. That is above their capacity, so they would not be able to do the entire 60 acres. They gave an estimate of likely somewhere between 5 and 15 acres they would be able to handle. And they would rely on a lot of outside coordination. So the examples they provided to me was if one of the FFA members' fathers had a farm implement, they would utilize that farm implement because they do not have all the farm implements. If family members did not have those farm implements, they would then subcontract out for somebody to come in and plant or harvest. But they were very, very excited about the possibility. Again, but it's only for a limited amount. We did receive a proposal, from AJ Ochoa to extend the land lease. And the proposal is the same as it was in previous years, for the same amounts, and he would extend that for this coming year, and it could be renewable annually until we actually commence construction. He did state that he would prefer not to have to go through this every year, and simply, if we were to utilize him, simply say, okay, another year, AJ, another year. So his proposal, if it was accepted by the board, he would prefer for it to just simply be updated each year. I also did include in here an irrigation cost. I just wanted to remind the board that currently, well, I shouldn't say currently, last year, under last year's agreement, the farmer, AJ Ochoa, provided the water. But if we were to move into a negotiation with another farmer, we would have to provide that water. We would also have to provide it for FFA. And these are updated costs from the East Columbia Basin Irrigation District.
$2,700 right around in there, right?
Well, that's for 40 acres. Currently 60 acres is being farmed. So the total water cost would be $4,196.60. And that's an annual cost. So that's everything that I had on the land lease. I would be more than happy to answer any questions any board members may have.
I have some questions, but I'll let the rest of the board ask first.
My questions need to come after we get some feedback from the FFA program.
Okay. Yeah, and my really only question has to do with making sure that we've allowed at least 45 days to the public to bid, and what public under policy 6112, the district operating policy, it requires us as a district, as I read this, to offer the lease to anyone to be able to lease it, and it has to be published at least 45 days before the lease is awarded if the value of the lease is more than $10,000, which under, I will say, under my understanding of what I've just read in this lease, it would be less than $10,000. 60 acres times 100 would be $6,000 to rent that piece of ground for the public that's out there.
Well,
if there's
That's,
somebody that wants
that's
to
the
show
current
up.
offer. That's not a set price. That's the current offer.
Yeah, who determines the value? I would guess I would ask that question.
Yeah.
If it was fair market value for irrigated land, it would be over $10,000 for that those 60 acres, because it would be approximately 18,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I guess I don't know who determines that. If the board says we feel like this ground is worth more than $10,000, then I suppose the board needs to make sure that there's 45 days at least notice put out in the public paper before we award this.
Well, yeah,
Even though the offer is for less than
This-
10,000.
This is the district operating policy, so this would be a policy that has been delegated to the district to handle. And so I think that's on Dr. Hurst to make sure that that's being followed. But as far as the value, based on, and I'm not a farmer, I don't know much about this, but based on conversations I've had, it does seem like $100 per acre is a really good price to pay to farm.
Really
irrigated
good for
farmland.
the district.
Nope. For the person paying. So
Yep.
that's my
If you
opinion.
hear
So-
anybody, call them.
So in my opinion, it would be valued over 10,000. Sounds like Brian has confirmed that. So I agree with you that we want to make sure we're following set policy, I would say, but I don't know what the timing's like on that either.
So, and we need to be able to help Brian and Chris out as a board. As a board, are we willing to put in an irrigation system to attract a higher lease?
Cost estimates are approximately $100,000 to do so.
To do what?
To put in an irrigation system?
No, that's not what you just
That's what
said.
you just said.
You
25
said
to 45,
25
right?
to 45.
No, that's just for the, excuse me, that's for the pump.
Yeah.
Right.
That's simply for the pump, plus
Yep.
the 6,000 for the water. If we want to limit it there, that's correct.
So I mean,
Cost
to
to
me,
put in a full-fledged irrigation system is
Well,
approximately
it
Correct.
depends
$100,000.
what crop you're doing. It
No, I
depends
don't.
on what
I don't think we
you're
would put in underground sprinkler lines. That
No.
wouldn't be that. I guess again, I'd clarify if the board is willing to offer to put in an irrigation pump and pay the water.
it seems like it's an inevitability, so why not do it now to provide that for potential lessees? And then they can determine, anyone who leases is going to take care of the water on it. That's what I understand is typical, the water costs. So if it's an investment in our part that we need to do anyways when we develop the land, then it seems like it makes sense to me.
It makes sense to me to at least offer to do that, and if the numbers don't bear out that it makes sense to do it, then not pay. You don't have to put in the irrigation system, the irrigation pump to be able to get people to bid. We can let them know that it's contingent upon us putting in the pump.
Sure.
Correct, as I understand it.
Right.
And then see who comes to bid. Obviously, from my perspective as a board member, if it was drip onions, for example, they would be paying for whatever cost it is. The $200 an acre would be included in there. They'd net it out.
Right.
From whatever offer they would give us would be net of that cost.
But I'd still, my first choice would be if FFA could potentially use some of this as an educational tool. I would.
Yeah, and
be all
it sounds like if they, again, it would be on us as when we put out, if we put it out to a more formal bid of saying, here's what we're willing to do. You would need to put in there that the other 28 acres is what would be left, right? Or is it 80 acres total?
It's 81 acres total, but for the current offer, it's only to farm 60 of those.
Right.
Last year,
That's
only,
just circle.
because
only
of the
60 was farmed.
Right.
That's correct.
Right. But what I'm saying is even when you do that, this is my understanding, is that if we have those kids if we have the FFA kids out there farming the non-farm ground, we still have to have permission from the person that's leasing the ground, because they're going to want the right to turn their equipment out around in the corners when they harvest, and he potentially may have an issue if there's other crops in the other 20 acres. The leaseholder would have to for sure understand that potential exists. And
Right. That might be, logistically, that might be a little difficult to be able to make them both happen. But I like the idea of seeing if it's possible.
But and that'd be my feeling is that we should be putting it out for formal bid in a paper publicly, however the district's going to do that, and give it the 45 days, but make sure that people understand that at least the majority of the board that's here is willing to put in an irrigation pump.
We'll take care of that. Yes, sir.
Based on what FFA comes back and tells us.
Yeah, and
If
we're
they come back and say, we think we can farm half of it, I would say, we don't have to farm the
yeah,
other
that's
half.
I'm basing that off of Brian's remark that they were saying 10 to 15 acres max, but I agree with you. If the kids want to farm it, I think we should let them farm as much as they want.
So maybe a contingency here is if we get some definitely different information back from FFA, we might need to talk about it again as a board.
Yeah. So
Does the
sometimes
board
we're
have to
not
approve
clear.
that?
So is that?
We have it all down.
I don't think we have to approve it to go to bid.
To go out to bid? Okay.
It's not fruitful to have the district do something that the board's not going to approve in the end. So
We have it all down. Yes, sir.
okay, all right. Get back to the. Sorry, I had to flip over to policies. I need to get back to our meeting agenda. Item C5, tennis court updates. Mr. Foltz,
Good evening. Is this working? Everybody hear me?
we can hear you.
Yeah, so got a little miscommunication on getting some information to Thalia to have up on there for you. So I'll work on that next time. But the last 2 weeks since last time we met, we had the contractor had the asphalt cutter in there and got the holes cut for the tennis court fencing and the tennis court net. The tennis court surface contractor came in, did his flood tests, test for level on the asphalt. Found 2 minor issues that he says he can fix up no problem. And then last week we had the fencing company come in, set the poles for their fencing, and take final measurements for gates to get those made up. And the asphalt company came back and filled in all those holes for the last time around the fencing and the tennis nets. And currently we have scheduled the fencing materials was delivered today. They'll start work on Wednesday. The asphalt striping company will be in tomorrow, Tuesday, to start striping the parking spots on the east side and the south side. And we are scheduled tentatively for court surface after November 1st. And that's where we're sitting at right now. So.
And your memo said it needs to be 50 degrees to do the court service. Do you remember?
50 degrees. There's a few degrees of leeway in there depending on sunshine and how warm the court surface is. I have the weather report from the Weather Channel and AccuWeather and for the next month, and it's looking like 45 and see, we're in 50s, 60s this week, 48 around average next week. No, 50 to 60s next week through the 1st, 48 through the week of the 5th, drops down to 46 average to the 12th. It does start getting colder towards the end of the month, but there's
Hopefully we'll hit
there's
that-
still some hope in
that
there.
timeline, huh?
Greg, how many days do they say it should take for the surfacing?
They expect 8 to 10 days for full court surfacing.
Prepare for sunshine and warm weather.
Yes,
Yes.
definitely.
Okay. Is there any
Anything
questions for Greg?
No, thank you for the update.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to item B6. Justin Johnson, I believe, has a pre-approved data presentation for us.
All right, how are you guys doing tonight?
Good.
All right. Talia, do you want to keep flipping through them? So, first of all, like they said, I'm Justin Johnson, Director of Data and Innovations. So it's a new position at the district level. Primary responsibilities being supporting the buildings with data collection and analysis. Also, we have some instructional frameworks that need to be maintained, and so the buildings have all the information that they need and the resources. And then also district level assessments, things that we're, some of them we're creating on our own and others we have brought in, but supporting the buildings at that level. The learning objectives for tonight, we're going to go over some Claim 1 concepts and procedures materials, look at what we're putting in front of our students every day, and then how are we assessing if we're doing well and what we need to do next. This fits into the vision of the district because it fits nicely into the foundational skills and the STEAM portion of it, so the mathematics. The concepts and procedures is the foundation of math, and so that's really what we're going to look at tonight. And again, just keeping the instructional vision in front of us, we create and cultivate a safe environment of respect and rapport where instruction is intentional, engaging, challenging, accessible for all students. And that last little bit is the really important part for all students tonight. And again, focusing on our 2 instructional priorities, reading comprehension and math concepts and procedures. And again, math concepts and procedures is our area tonight. Diving into the current reality, this is looking over the last 3 years. So the state breaks apart the data for math into 3 separate areas. Math concepts and procedures is first, problem solving and data analysis, and then communicating reasoning is the third section. And again, concepts and procedures is the foundation of math. And right now, for the last 3 years, we've seen that across the board, grades 3 through 11, so it's all the students that have taken the Smarter Balanced, we've been holding right at about 50% of our kids. About half of them are below standard in this area. So this is an area we really need to focus on and figure out quickly. This summer, a group of teacher leaders from each of the buildings got together and looked through a lot of different strategies of how are we going to attack this problem. And the teacher clarity kind of rose to the top. All the buildings decided this is the direction we really want to go. We really believe that this is going to work. And the little graph on the side here shows 0.4 is considered a year's worth of growth. And so if we can get to 0.4, we're giving each kid a year's worth of growth. Teacher clarity has shown to have an effect size of 0.75, so almost 2 years worth of growth if we're really intentional in what we're doing. And what teacher clarity means, this is kind of wordy over here, but to summarize it is we need to be able to clearly communicate what are we expecting our students to be able to do. We need to be able to clearly articulate the success criteria for each lesson. When we're walking into a lesson, we need to know by the end this is what students we need them to be able to master. Also, we need to know how they're progressing within that lesson and the progression of the skills themselves, and then where are we going to go next? Did we get where we needed to be? If so, where next? If not, what are we going to do? So to start with, to really ensure that we can clearly articulate the success criteria and that everybody has access to all the material that they need. These resources, this is just the cover of these resources, but they were produced for grades 3 through 8, and all teachers had a chance to sit down, and we sat with them for at least 45 minutes and went through the materials page by page and said, what's in here? How can it help us with our lessons? The first part of those materials, so again, success criteria. What do we expect the students to be able to do? These are, again, just some images here, but these are in the resources. The grade level focus, this comes straight from the Common Core standards and the consortium itself. they've determined all the standards are important, right? That's why they're standard. But there's a hierarchy in which ones are the most important throughout the progression. So if fourth graders have certain skills, they're going to be successful in fifth. And that's what this tells us. What's the most important? Then that leads us into how is it going to be assessed. So the most important standards are going to be most heavily assessed. So we're not teaching to the test necessarily. We're teaching to the most important standards, and that's what, that's what the kids are going to see the most on the assessment. And so it's important for our teachers to know that end game and why is it we're doing what we're doing, and where should we be spending most of our time. It's recommended through the Common Core that you're spending 65 to 85% of your time on those major cluster standards. And so again, that's why they're the most heavily assessed. These resources also break apart each of the targets. And the targets, within each target lives 2 or more standards. And so how is the standard going to be assessed? They give us exactly what it's going to look like. Here's the item specs. Here's exactly what your students need to know. And again, that's the end game. That's our success criteria. If we want our students to be successful, we need to know what they're going to be asked to do in the end. And again, these are for each grade, grades 3 through 8. Every standard is listed. To support the buildings and the teachers, and most importantly the students, we're providing materials for them every day to continually review what they've learned, so nothing ever goes away. And so they're able to look at 4 different problems every day that come straight from the item specs that they've already learned in class. And so by the time they're getting to the assessment, they will have reviewed some of the items, some of the standards up to 150 times. And again, those are written directly from the item specs. So the language of the question, the format of the question, things like that aren't going to trip up our kids when they get there because they've seen them over and over and over again. These are provided for grades 3 through 8. They're written for the teachers and for the buildings, so they follow our scope and sequence very tightly. The teachers are constantly in communication with me that, hey, we haven't quite got to this standard yet. We have to back off on the entry tasks. Or we're moving a little faster. We can start to add other things in. But these are strictly review. Our kids are just seeing those every day. To monitor where we're at. So, yeah, we're practicing. Yeah, we know where we need to, what we need to be teaching. But we also need to know, are the kids learning it? Because that's ultimately the goal. So every other Friday, instead of taking a paper pencil review, those 4 questions, these are online quizzes that the kids are taking. And again, they're written specifically from the item specs, so they look very, very much like the test. The questions that they'll see are only things that they've learned already. So in theory, it's all review. And again, every grade 3 through 8 sees these every other Friday. They're designed so that the students will take a quick quiz on Friday, and then on Monday, the following Monday is the teacher PLC, so the data is right there for the teachers. How are they doing on those standards that we've already taught? The feedback, there's different layers of it. The students, immediately when they're finishing these quizzes, it pops up. It'll give them like, question 1, you got the answer correct, you're good to go. Question 2, you put this, the answer was this. So they're immediate feedback. Did I get 100%? Did I get a 0? What do I need to work on? And that leads to some good conversations I've seen with teachers. Also, the teachers have immediate access to the results themselves. How did my kids do on Standard 4, NBT 4? Are we getting it? Are we not? There's actually a live assess. They can actually watch as the kids are clicking answers to see how they're doing. And then also the building leaders, principals, are able to say over time, how's my building doing in math? I'm not going to wait until the end to find out how we did. I'm going to know along the way, and we're going to be able to predict pretty closely how we're going to do over time. Here's just a couple examples of the data itself. On the left here is the classroom level. So it's really hard to see, but this would be students' names over here, and then each of these columns is a different standard. So the teacher would be able to obviously see quickly how their students are doing as a whole and also individually. And then on the right here is building level. So instead of looking at it really with a fine-tooth comb at the principal level, saying, how's my building doing on this standard? And we can see that over time, and knowing which are our most important standards. So if we're continually seeing red in that standard or that cluster, we need some work. That's the area we need to focus on. And the big thing with this data is we heard this summer in one of the trainings we went to. It's we got you, not we got you. We're not trying to catch anybody doing anything or not doing something, but it's more, how can we support you? You know, if we know that every building's struggling in a certain standard, obviously the materials we're putting in front of our kids aren't working. We need to do something different. But if we don't have the data in front of us, we won't know that until it's too late. This was just a kind of a hierarchy of successful assessment systems that are put in place, and it's taken from the Corwin folks that we've done a lot of our research around or from. At the bottom is the formative classroom assessments, and in our system that we're creating, those daily entry tasks that the kids see, those 4 questions every day, that's our daily formative, that's giving the teacher a lot of information. Next up is our 1 to 4 times a month formative common assessments. Those are our entry task quizzes online. The benchmark interims, we have module assessments that come at the end of each of the sections of math. And we also have some block assessments. The data perception, the perception data is, we'll be taking a couple times a year, finding out, you know, how's this system working for everybody? If it's not working, we need to tweak it. And then our end game, our annual assessment at the end is our smarter balance. And so by the time we get there, like I said, we're going to be able to predict and come up with a plan of how to react before that assessment. So just real quick in summary, like I said, we're focused around teacher clarity. It has a high effect size. If we do it well, we're going to see a lot of growth. In the areas of that Hattie defines around this is organization, explanation, examples, guided practice, and assessment of student learning. And so all of those areas are really focused in our system of how we're going to attack this, and each of those areas is present. So that's all I have. Any questions for me?
Probably not a question for me, just a comment. You know, I think ever since I got on the board, we always paid lip service to data-driven instruction.
Yep.
And now I know for sure with the role that you have that's happening. And I don't think that anyone can argue or ignore the fact that you know, you were at Wahidas obviously making Pete look good. But your work in data there has got to be a big role in how Wahidas, when you look at the statistics over the last few years and how Wahidas had just continued to grow in their performances on the assessments, obviously that had something to do with it. And so I look forward to your role in that to help all of our elementaries and our secondary schools. So
yeah, that was a learning experience, and this is kind of taking it to the next level. How can we make that happen for everybody at all levels, and support the heck out of everybody so that it's not just one more thing they have to do, but the information is right there and exactly what they need, and show them how it makes sense. You know, it's not just more numbers. It's how can we really use this tomorrow to make change. So,
great.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Moving on to item C7, Dr. Hurst has asked Sander Villarreal to present on District Operating Policy 5030.
So we instituted a District Operating Policy 5030 on compensatory time. And essentially what that is it's any overtime, so it's time off in lieu of overtime pay. So our current practice, we did not have a check and balance for our comp time. What I was coming to find out is employees were tracking their own comp time, and the district did not know of any liabilities, any comp time that were on the books. So this district operating policy it's essentially a check and balance. So employees will have to get prior approval of extra hours worked. Their supervisor will have to sign off on that, and then it is turned into HR, and HR will track all comp time. So the excess hours, we kept the language that's in our PSE, collective bargaining agreement, on usage, and if it's not used within 60 days, then it will be paid out. So we won't have any excess comp time on the books. So that's essentially what this policy is.
Okay, looks like a prudent practice. Dr. Hurst, is that going to be in the next approved agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the directors?
No.
Okay.
Stuart?
It's easy, right?
No questions. Okay. All right. Moving on to item C8, bus driver shortage. It looks like Dr. Hurst has asked Sandra and Marion to present to the board on this.
Yes, sir.
I think he turned it back off. You didn't. I'm pretty sure Greg did.
Failed test.
Steen?
Oh,
There
there
you
you go.
So Marion Shade is joining me this evening, Director of Transportation, and we are here today to discuss our current bus driver shortage and what our reality is currently and how it affects school bell bus times. So we'd like to start off with a video that talks about the bus driver shortage really in the nation. We're not isolated here in Othello. It's not just an issue that the Othello community is facing. It's actually it's a shortage that the nation is experiencing. So we'd like for you to watch this video. It's just a couple of minutes long.
About a school bus driver shortage. As you know, kids across the country, they're heading back to school. How they're actually getting there is becoming a challenge for many school districts. ABC's Steve Osunsami is there in Georgia with the story for us. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning to you, Robin. We're outside the Cobb County School Bus Barn here in Georgia, where they are short nearly 40 drivers. In Gwinnett County to the east, they're short 100 drivers.
It's a serious shortage in school districts across the country. As children are heading back to classes this month, many school systems are finding they don't have enough people to drive their buses.
The economy's better, so people are going back to jobs that they had done previously, or they find the need to stay at home.
In Denver this year, where they're still looking for at least 40 more school bus drivers, they're offering bonuses and pay raises. And they're even recruiting stay-at-home parents, hoping they can help fill the gap. Even telling them they can bring any preschool-aged children at home along for the ride.
As long as they can walk up on a bus, we can get them into a car seat and make sure that they're safe.
According to a recent survey by School Bus Fleet magazine, 22% of bus contractors are calling the shortage severe, and 5% say they're desperate to find drivers.
We're seeing some school districts having to cut school bus routes or consolidate them, having fewer stops.
One of the problems appears to be the long process it takes to get a commercial driver's license. In most states, training can take up to 12 weeks with extensive drug tests and background checks. Experts also say the salaries, with some newer drivers bringing in about $50 a day, and split shifts, working at 2 different times each day, aren't helping. Julie Castle says it's the bond she makes with the children on her bus that keeps her coming back.
I was a route driver for 2 years, and I still see kids that I know that, you know, they're like, hey, Miss Julie, you know, and so that's really cool. I like that.
In some school districts, this has become a real problem for after-school programs. It's taking children a lot longer to get home. Guys?
Such an important job.
Thank you, Steve.
And you were a bus driver, right?
I was one of my first jobs. I was very young, and I know what they're talking about. It worked for me because I was in school. So I could drive in the morning, go to my classes, and then drive in the afternoon. But if you're an adult, it's a little more challenging. But it is so rewarding. The kids.
The kids smile.
When you got to school, what did you do at the bus?
I just parked the bus at school.
You parked the bus at school to go to school.
Right, and then I picked them up.
And then
there.
when you got home, everyone's like, "Robin's home," because the bus is pulling up, like
in the front yard. But it is so necessary, and give them a raise. I mean, these are people who are driving your precious cargo.
The bus driver used to let me open the door for the kids getting off the bus.
Always wanted to do that.
Yeah. My sister was mortified, though, in the back of the bus. She's like, Dave, would you just sit down? Explains a lot, doesn't it? We have a bond. We didn't know about that.
We did.
Everybody got something about school bus. They wanted to be a part of it. And
So this shortage that we have here, we just wanted to talk a little bit more about what we're experiencing here at the Othello School District. So what we're experiencing is that we have a total of 25 routes. 6 of those are currently open. So a route in the morning and the afternoon will equates to 1 route. So we have 6 routes that are currently open. We have 2 subs that we are utilizing right now daily that are going on some sort of leave here pretty quickly. we are noticing that we're not having enough space in between bell times, and Marion will go into that a little bit further in the next few slides. Our buses are operating at capacity. They're operating at about 75 students per bus. And so students are having to wait until buses are going home, dropping off, and then coming back. So we're experiencing that as well. And then we've had to cancel a couple of athletic events due to a bus driver shortage. So those after-school trips, we're having some issues accommodating. And then, of course, our bus drivers, they're working, our current bus drivers, giving them kudos because they are not requesting any time off. They understand the shortage that we're in. And so they are working really hard. And I think we have some of them here today. So just really want to thank them for all the hard work that they are putting in. So what is the root cause? Well, the root cause is we're having trouble finding bus drivers. So we put together a recruitment plan on what are we going to do to address this emergent issue. So the first thing that we started back in August was we instituted a $500 signing and retention stipend. So any new bus drivers that were coming on board, as soon as they get a CDL and school bus driver endorsement, then they would get a $500 signing stipend. We also rewarded as a retention bonus to all of our current bus drivers a $500 retention stipend. Again, they put in extra hours, a lot of hard work last year without complaint, and so we thought that it was well deserved. Pete Perez and myself, we presented to our largest internal classification, which is our paras, and to try to recruit them. And so we sent out an invitation and held a meeting to all of our paras. We did get a pretty good turnout, and we left excited because we had 6 that signed up. So this means that they were going to be flexible in their work days, so we would either grab them for a morning or afternoon route. So then when we started phase 1 of signing them up for a bus driver, we had 5 bail out. But we did get 1 from that meeting. So in essence, it was successful. We did get 1 who's currently going through the process of being a certified school bus driver. We're looking at alternate certification requirements. So acknowledging the CDL and school bus driver endorsement in lieu of a high school diploma or GED. That's something that we're looking at as through our para meetings. We did get some staff that said, well, I know some that would love to drive a school bus, however, they don't carry that high school diploma or GED. So we did talk with surrounding school districts, and there were some school districts that were considering that as well, or for custodial not requiring a high school diploma. So that's something that we're looking into to try to be more creative in our strategic in our recruitment plan. Ben Schuler and IT and Marion are working on a video campaign, and what they did was they interviewed our bus drivers, and they have snippets of why they are bus drivers and why they do what they do every day. And so that's going to feed into a media advertisement that we are going to feed on our website, Facebook, and it's going to be ongoing recruitment. So again, just trying to be creative and target those audience. We really want to target college students that need some extra money, that there could be flexible work for them, retired folks, and stay-at-home moms that just want to get out of the house for a few hours. So really wanting to really gravitate towards those populations. We have created flyers and postcards. We're looking at revamping those, especially if we are re-looking at the qualifications of the position. And then working with WorkSource with their unemployment population to see if they meet the needs of the qualification of a bus driver. Which the qualifications are: a bus driver, you have to be 21 years of age or older, a clean driving record, able to pass a background screen and a drug screen. and then of course acquire the CDL and school bus driver endorsement. So again, so advertising at local community colleges so that we can try to encourage those college students to apply. We're doing some event advertising. We were at the fair. We did have a school bus out there handing out postcards, and at our booth. We're going to be at the trunk or treat here at Wahitas. Marion's going to have a school bus out there again with some staff that are going to be advertising for our opening. And then we were at a local showcase. So, you know, even though the students couldn't be bus drivers, as if, you know, it's if they have friends or family that are interested, it's just all by word of mouth. So hoping we can reach people that way. And then the newspaper, we really haven't been posting in newspapers. It's not a source that people are usually, in this day and age, looking at. But for the population that we're trying to trigger, it is worth putting in the newspaper. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And then also all of our reader boards and asking local businesses like Columbia Bank and so forth, perhaps maybe even CBHA, if they'd be willing to post our openings on their reader boards. We're going to campaign at conferences, so through our teacher conferences, we'll have our bus driver recruitment flyer there as well, so that our teachers can give in the conference packet to our parents. And then we also have the idea of plugging in an ad at our local movie theater. So those are some of the recruitment initiatives that we're looking at. If we were to get a bus driver today, it still takes about 4 to 6 weeks to become a certified school bus driver. So if you want to go to the next slide. We need some Band-Aids for immediate assistance because we are really hurting with just the daily routes. So what we have done is we have pulled a custodian who has the qualifications and has that CDL and school bus driver endorsement to drive a full-time route. So he is driving route morning and afternoon, and we have a sub filling in for his custodial duties. We have a mechanic and a secretary, maintenance secretary, who are driving daily for us. And we're doubling up routes as much as possible. We talked about mandatory after-school programs, so that's something that we're linking into. That would be essentially targeting like those larger population centers, where we would put them in an after-school program, and it would either be enrichment or an intervention program that the principal would develop with their teachers. So those are some items that we've come up with for immediate remedies. And then the last one is school bell bus time. So possibly looking at changing those to help with some of the stress that our current bus drivers are going through. So Marion's going to talk about the school bell bus times here. Oh, sorry, that's me still. So before we talk about the school bell bus times, what we have come up with 2 school bell bus time proposals, and we've put together a staff and community focus group that could help us decide which is the best for our community, for our kids, for our parents. And so we have about 25 to 30 community members that we have both from OEA, Union, and PSE. And we also have students and then parents. So we asked buildings to come up with 2 names of parents that could help us in this focus group. So our focus group will meet first tomorrow at the ORTC building at 3:30. And the intent really is to go through some exercises and gather their feedback, their concerns with the 2 proposed bell times. Through that focus group, a third option might come forward, or there may be some concerns that we didn't see with either of the bell times that would push us to coming up with a third option and then reconvening with the focus group. So the next slide, Marion, will talk about the school bell bus times and what those bell time options are.
So I have a question real
Sure.
quick. Just wondering if this has been thought of. I'm just thinking about the ag community and the difficulty they've had in employing workers, migrant workers, and the things that they've done to mitigate that through HR, what's it called? The
HSA?
it's not HSA, but anyway, the migrant programs. One of my thoughts is I'm just curious if we've went and talked to other business owners that own trucking companies and asked them if it's possible for us to lease some of their employees certain times of the day so that those employees can keep their full-time jobs, but we could utilize them. They all have CDLs in the morning and in the afternoon and pay their employer, and then they pay the employee. Kind of like they do with labor. They do that. There's several labor management companies that do that.
I haven't thought of that myself, but that's something that I think we can definitely, it's worth a shot and it's worth looking into, so we'll definitely
we don't have a
into it.
shortage of truck drivers in this community. We just have a shortage of bus drivers.
Yeah, and with that, I mean, we pay pretty competitively, I have to say. We $19.02 an hour, and looking at our surrounding communities, we are one of the top payers for our bus drivers.
Yeah, that was my only thought is there may be, if you went and talked to some trucking companies, they may have people where they could say, okay, these guys can come work for me all day long, but they can drive bus these 3 hours a day or 4 hours or whatever, especially short term.
Right, that's a great
to
idea.
help us. But
Well, because they're coming into their...
they're coming into their slower time right now.
They're coming into their slow time.
Yeah, we'll definitely look into that.
Just a question, you say it takes like 4 to 6 weeks to go through the process to get your CDL.
Right, it does.
So what's the cost to them as they're going through this?
We are paying for all of their fees now. We used to not, but we now pay for, it's $100 for the skills test. It's $35 for the written test each, and there's 4. The fingerprinting fee is $50-something, I think, that they have to pay, or that comes out of their pocket. That's the only thing that we don't pay. We pay for their CDL physical and everything. Just a side note on getting the CDL drivers from the trucking companies, they have to go through the process and go through the skills test and everything again in a school bus. Just because they have their CDL doesn't make them qualified to drive the school bus.
Right, they have to have the school bus endorsement
Right,
too.
and
Yeah.
driving records, they can't have more than 2 speeding tickets, and so that's something, because we have had some come in and apply, but that kind of gets them out of the loop, so.
What's it going to take to get rid of the high school diploma requirement or GED?
Your approval.
Yeah, so that's, we're just going to move forward. We're going to go ahead and move forward with removing that requirement with, in lieu of the CDL and school bus driver endorsement.
So that's not a state requirement.
Okay.
So the 2 speeding tickets, is that a state requirement or is that our own?
That's OSPI. That comes from, yeah, anything over 2 speeding tickets, then they lose their school bus endorsement.
How many years?
5 years. So we have the first option 1 on the bell times. It is pretty close to what we are doing right now, leaving the elementary starting first and the middle school and high school at the end of the day. The pros and cons of this schedule, and we've added the after-school programs too at the end too of the day that would be mandatory. But some of the pros are the limited impact on the current bell times, smaller bus loads because we'd be able to take kids home and come back. We live in we're kind of blessed in the location where we're at because we have a lot of close proximity stops that we can go and unload kids and come back and get another group of kids. Also, adequate time for breakfast. As it is right now, we're getting kids to school late to where they aren't getting breakfast. And so we need to get the kids here on time. The cons are time changes for the community and the staff schedule, and the gap for the younger siblings waiting for older siblings to get picked up until they get out of school. And then the loss of instructional time for away athletics. The bell times ending for the high school would be 3:30. A lot of their trips leave at 1, 1:15, so they're losing 2+ hours of instructional time when they leave for athletic events. The second option for bell times is having the high school and the middle school start first, and then they would be home for the elementary students to get home when they get home from school, also not being left at the schools at the end of the day waiting for their older siblings to pick them up. And then again, it has the after school program end times on that also. And so the pros for this one as well: smaller bus loads, adequate time for breakfast, no gap for siblings picking up younger siblings, afternoon staff meetings, I believe that was for the high school, limits the loss of instructional time for the away athletic events, and then the after school program options. The cons are the time changes again with the community and staff, and the staff schedule.
Do you have any idea of the percentage of kids that drop their siblings off for school? Do we know if that's a big number? I know it benefits the other way, but I'm wondering if what percentage are going to have a hard time getting kids to school because their siblings are taking them.
Yeah, and so hopefully that's something that we can gather more information on through our focus group tomorrow.
Yeah, it may accommodate.
Yeah.
I know, like right now, they don't let the kids in the schools until 5 minutes before school starts, and if you're going to winter and you've got kids getting dropped off when it's freezing outside and having to sit outside for 20 minutes, not going to be very good.
Right.
Maybe they can open the schools up earlier.
So the two options, really the end results are the same. So really it's what benefits our kids and our community the most is really up to the community. And so we did do some research at the board's request on the benefits of start times. And so there is lots of research that says that later start times for high schoolers promotes the well-being of the high schooler, where they get more sleep, because high schooler students tend to go to sleep later. They have better student attention. There's increased attendance, and their academics have improved. If we did propose late start time for the high schoolers, then that would mean an earlier start time for the elementary school age children go to sleep earlier. So there are negatives. The negatives is if we have the high schoolers start at a later time, then obviously there is no child care in the afternoon for those parents that relied on the older siblings and being there when their younger children got dropped off. There was also research that if we had a late start for the younger elementary school children, that the younger children do end up growing tired throughout the day. So in the afternoon, they saw that children would fall asleep on the bus rides, which I'm told that happens now. But they'd fall asleep, and their safety issues, potentially bus drivers forgetting that there was a child on the bus. And then that instructional time in the afternoon for elementary school age children decreases because the children obviously grow tired. So there's research, there's pros and cons to it all. So what the next steps are is let's hold our focus group and see what comes of light of that. There could be a possible second focus group, but we are looking to move pretty quickly because our issues that we're facing daily, they need to be resolved or pretty quickly. So if there is a second focus group, we're hoping to do that by the end of the week, and then hopefully propose a final school bell time to the board by early next week, and then proceed with the communication plan, the new school bell bus times, and then just always proceeding to continually and aggressively search for our bus drivers, and really reevaluating and assessing our recruitment strategies. The next slide just talks about what the communication plan could look like. And that could change depending on where we're at with the focus group. But the messages are relaying the bus driver shortage, which we're doing today. Talking about any after-school programs. We had before-school programs in there as well, but right now we're just looking at after-school programs. Communications with family and students at student conferences. So we are hoping that we could have a decision by next week so that we can start communication with parents at student conferences. And so we're hoping that the new school bell bus times would be instituted after Christmas break. So that gives some planning for parents throughout Christmas break to do that. Any questions?
Does the OEA contract address what time school can start and end?
There's no start time or end time in the OEA contract.
Okay. And it's something that you need board approval to change, or you don't?
I believe we do need board approval on the new school bell times, yes.
Okay. Is there any other questions? Yeah, I realize you're going to come back. I just wasn't, under governance, I don't know that you need that, but I know we did approve the.
Well, I think we
the
approved
board
it
approved
last
the
year,
other times.
so I think that's where, but I'm not sure if it's absolutely necessary.
The only operating policies that we have to approve would be ones that are, we're legally required to approve. So, that's my understanding.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was asking.
So if it's a matter of you moving forward or having to wait for us to do that, that's the only reason I bring that up.
Okay.
Something to research if there's some mandatory DOP policy or something. But we have ELs that say you're going to treat the kids the best you can. So, absolutely, you can.
As for like being worried about the younger students having to wait for their older siblings, I know personally for like our school, we do have a couple kids that come in and they have to wait for our classes to get over, and it's not the most ideal situation, but it is, you know, like possible to have them just chill in the library or something. Because I don't want to start school at 7:45. No. But
Thank you for the feedback.
The word is that you have a tough time with the 820. No, I'm just kidding. So, just a general question. My perception, I guess, is that there's a lot more kids that get bused to school than 5 years ago when I was in school. And so, is that true? Is that just my perception, or is there more kids that are riding the bus? Like sometimes I feel like there's kids like 5 blocks away from the school getting picked up,
and we have the shuttle bus that goes from each elementary school, well, all the schools, and shuttles the kids that might live on one side of the town to the other. We also do shuttle the kids down here on Soda Street in the trailer court, just because of the safety issue it has caused with them walking up Juniper Street and being a hazard. But we transport about 1,550 kids a day to and from school.
So what is our, is there a legal requirement of how far kids have to live away before we have to bus them?
It's a 1 mile radius from their school.
That's when we're required.
That's what, yeah.
And that's a state law?
And special ed, we're supposed to, that's OSPI, yeah, that's.
Okay.
That it's anything over 1 mile we transport.
So we're around 30% of our students.
Mm-hmm.
So do you know how that compares to 10, 15 years ago?
I think it's way more, but
feels like more.
Yeah.
Our district's grown too. So
it has.
Well, I was talking on a percentage.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if that's part of the shortage, is also that there needs to be more buses because there's more kids that percentage-wise that get bused. I was just curious about it.
Yeah.
I wonder if you knew.
Then how? Do you know how many kids we're busing that technically live outside of our district now? Is there?
Outside of our district, we don't transport any. If we do, they meet us at the county line, our border, our boundary, and we bring them the rest of the way.
Okay. I've never seen the exact line. I was just curious. I know some, as you head south, there's some people that I know are bused quite a ways out there. I just don't know where the
Yeah.
line is, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for the information.
All right. I'm moving on to item D, D1 EL12 under organization assurance of organizational performance. EL12 Survey Monkey. Looks like all 5 board members at least answered the first question. The second question, 4 board members, 100% felt like it was in compliance. Same with the third. The fourth, the fifth. They're all showing in compliance with no comments. Okay. So EL12 looks to be, according to the Survey Monkey, in compliance. And EL13, I believe there was just one question. And one board member marked the question number 1 in compliance with an exception with no comment. So I don't, if there's one of the board members here that marked that. Usually when there's no comments, it's
If it was, it was accidental.
Somebody accidentally marked it. And it has to do with providing language translation services, and I believe we do a pretty good job. The superintendent's done a good job at that. So it looks like EL13's in compliance as well. And so we'll fill out those monitoring report documents, and then EL1 and policy review. Budget planning, I don't see any where anything's been proposed.
EL8.
EL8, sorry. E1, EL8.
This is one that was changed last meeting, and there was a request to put them back in this meeting for us to review them.
Okay, they're not side by side though. What
Yeah.
was changed on them? Just the
Yeah.
failure.
It was just some wording stuff, but yeah.
It's corrected, right? From what you saw. I remember that now. You
Dr. Hurst says yes, so it must be.
Some reading.
This one looked good, yeah. I think I have a comment on one or two of them.
So I'll accept a motion to approve that revised document
We need a motion for EL8.
for EL8. If we don't have one, it'll go into consent agenda or something for the next meeting. Or if it's not a majority vote, it will as well.
I move to approve the corrections to the new EL8 budget planning.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Simmons to approve the revised EL8 policy.
Second.
Second by Director Hilmus. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 3-0. EL9 looks like the same thing. I'll accept a motion to approve.
I move to approve EL9.
A motion by Director Hilmus to approve revised policy EL9.
Second.
Second by Director Simmons. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Item E3, revised EL12.
There are a couple things in this one. Number 1. What's that?
Oh, sorry. Spelling error.
Yeah, number 1 says a failure to submit monitoring data required by the board accurate. I think it should say required by the board in an accurate and understandable fashion. So in an would need to be after board. On number 10, the bottom, a failure to advise and include, I think that's supposed to say advise and include the board before the next regularly scheduled board meeting of any formal public communications. I think that should just say a failure to advise the board before the next regularly scheduled board meeting. Would include and include need to be in there? Need some help on that?
I actually agree with you.
I don't
Failure
think
to
so.
Advise the board.
Advise the board, okay. Those were the only two things I saw on that one. That
Are those simple enough that you can make the corrections?
So I move to approve EL 12 with the correction to bullet item 1 as mentioned, and the correction to bullet item 10 as mentioned.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Simmons to approve revised EL 12 with the noted corrections. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Director Hilmes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Okay, item E4, which would be EL 15, revised EL 15. I'll accept a motion to approve.
I move to approve revised EL 15.
We have a motion to approve revised EL 15.
Before I second, I just wanted you guys to read number 1, and it's just I feel like there's an extra comma. A failure to adopt an age-appropriate written student conduct and discipline. Does there need to be any commas in that before and after written?
I don't know.
English wasn't my best subject.
I would, I know in the past we've utilized some of our resident English majors to help us with some of this wording.
Anyone in the house?
But so maybe we could send it off to Word Sleuth.
I don't know. I think we have a really.
I'm sure we can find some somewhere.
Yeah, that was the only thing I saw in there I was curious about.
So
I second the approval with I'm okay with it. Any changes to grammar, I guess, but at least punctuation.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve revised EL 15. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 3-0. Just a note, it's really not part of the policy, but we want to make sure we get where it says last revised and last reviewed. We want to make sure those dates are correct on here.
So,
because the last revised date would not be October 20th, it would be today. And the last reviewed, I don't know that that's today. I think that's last time we actually reviewed the policy, which would be whenever the monitoring response document is.
Also, I was trying to pull up EL 12 and EL 15. Well, EL 12 for sure to look at the old policy, but it was already updated in the board policies. So make sure we don't update those until we prove it. In that process, I also saw that EL 8 or GP 8.2, our new policy we approved, has not been put into the new. I was actually looking for information on executive sessions in that, but that's not in the policies section, the policies tab of board docs.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. One last thing just for the board, since I was looking at some policies today as well, and I thought I was going to ask clarification from the board. Looking for the right. It's a GP. I thought we talked about GP 4.1.1 point 2, point 3, and point 4 about only having one board self-assessment, and we still have 3 in here, and I can't recall. If we have 3, we should really be rotating them, because we're only assessing ourselves on one of the 3 that we have in here. So just a comment. I recall discussing it at some point, but I don't recall what we decided to do. I don't know if you guys recall or not.
Yeah, well, I think that the ones with 1.3, 1.4 that were supposed to be specifically for GP9 and GP10, and I don't know that we could determine why we had to have a specific separate one for those.
Because we monitor those policies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, 4.1.1 is already end of year.
Correct.
So, and then 4.1.2 is the one we use at each board meeting. So, yeah, we've always kind of wondered what 3 and 4 were for, and I've never taken any kind of made a decision on that.
So, Chris, if you could maybe put that on our agenda, put them in policy review for the next board meeting when the full board's here, and maybe President Garza will have some memory as to what. I know we've talked about it before, but
No problem. Got it.
okay. And then with that, we'll move on to item F, which is executive session. And so the board will recess for 5 minutes, and then after the 5-minute recess, we'll go into executive session for a period of 30 minutes for the purpose of discussing staff evaluation. So we will recess.